Welcome. This is the Living Triggered Life podcast with Keith Maskell.
And Roxann Maskell.
This is our first time recording and our first session, and we'll be coming to you, and the show will approximately be about half an hour or so, just so you guys will know that. Today, we'll be talking about the why. Why is it called Living a Triggered Life? You'll be hearing a little bit more about what we do, what this podcast will be about. So I will start out and tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Keith Maskell. I'm an actor, Screen Actors Guild, Actors Equity, full-time actor, social impact artist, and male survivor of sexual abuse, and got involved in a project called Triggered, which is a story about a male by the name of Malik, who's reflecting on looking at his past and trying to understand the abuse, but also looking towards the future to what will happen to him, so to speak. And that story alone struck a chord in me. And I grabbed my wife, Roxann, and we decided we've been looking for a project to use art as a social tool for social workers and other folks, and felt like this was the project for us to work on. So I got started with that. But I've always been passionate about young people. I've always been passionate about issues and projects that can provoke thought and laughter, but also for change and make people think. And I felt like this project was something that was powerful, but also gave me a platform to be able to, as a survivor, talk about my story. So that kind of what has led me to doing this podcast. And what's the podcast going to be about? Love, our relationship, how we met, the fact that we're bringing our own trauma histories to the relationship. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. Roxann will share hers. And how do we figure it out? How do we make that? We'll process live certain times, certain issues between us. We'll process it live right here. We'll talk about it. Right? So we'll mainly be about our relationship and about us and how we've come to the point of doing this podcast and our pace of healing and our journey to healing. But we'll also have guests on as well, psychotherapists, social workers, friends of ours, to talk more about this. And we'll hopefully have another couple on to be able to talk to them about how they deal with whatever they deal with, right? So we're all learning. So we're an expert on our relationship. Not necessarily experts on other people's relationships, but hopefully what we will be able to share, hopefully will help other couples who are going through the same thing. Because everybody's going through this in some ways, right? People are getting triggered in relationships and activated in relationships, and the two people have to figure out how to deal with that. And so hopefully by sharing our ways and how we're dealing with it, that some people can come up with some other ways for themselves or try what we're doing. I mean, it's no more than that. That's where we'll start with. We'll start there, and then we'll probably move in a different direction. I mean, I think that's important. It's important to say, and just be clear about it. The podcast will be about our relationship and how we bring our own trauma histories to it and how we deal with it as individuals, together, separately. And also me as a Black male, talk about what it's like to be a Black male, what it's like to be a survivor of abuse and be a Black male, and have to try to redefine my manhood as I navigate the world. Will be talked about. And of course, we'll be talking a lot with Roxann about her background and all that stuff as well, because that's just as equally as important. But we don't have as many Black men talking about mental health and exactly what their issues are, right? We have a lot of people talking in general right now, which is really great, about sports and mental health, but I'm naming what my trauma is. I'm naming what it is. I'm being extra vulnerable, and soft, as some people would say, because I'm actually sharing how I feel about what has happened to me and the process of dealing with it and how it's affected my mental health and how it's affected my relationships and how it's affected my career as an actor, as an educator and producer, social impact artist, founder of the Triggered Project, www.triggered1, the number, of course, number1.com, www.triggered1.com. So that's what it's going to be about. What we're doing with the Triggered Project, what Roxann's going to do with in terms of her career and things like that as well. So you'll learn all about us for the most part. Not everything, but almost everything. And we're going to be real. We're not going to sugarcoat this. We're not playing a role. It's not that type of a show. We're going to be real about it. Coming with a topic, and we're just going to talk about it. That's it. No more and no less. But I will let Roxann talk a little bit. What do you got to say, Rox?
So I'm Roxann, and
Hi, Roxann.
Hi, Keith. And I'm a licensed social worker. This is like super strange. I've never done a podcast before, so you got to forgive me. I'm still trying to figure it all out.
You talk all the damn time. Like, I don't understand what the problem is.
I know I talk all the damn time, but this is like so different for me. But
right, just talk.
We'll see.
Just talk.
So let me start again. I'm a licensed social worker, clinical social worker, and I have been doing social work for a really long time.
How long, Roxann?
20 plus years.
Dang, that's a lot.
But I just got my credentials not too long ago. You know how that is, chasing the paper. So I love working on these kinds of projects because I really am committed to ensuring that social workers sort of learn how to interact with clients with different issues, coming from different backgrounds from them sometimes. And you don't always get that training. So this is really important for me in my mind because I always want to give back to my community, which is communities of color, Black and brown, but also to my community of social workers, and ensuring that they have what they need to help support people in the community who are looking for therapy. So I've worked with families, I've worked with kids, I've worked in domestic violence, I work with young people, college age, worked with a lot of parents in my time with various issues, and also worked in healthcare. So I have sort of a vast experience, I would say. Do I have to say anything else?
No, you said a lot. Did you go to school?
Yes, I graduated from Simmons College, which is now Simmons University, with my master's degree in social work.
And what else?
What do you mean, what else? What other college education do I have?
You have more than one master's, I think.
I do have another master's from UMass Boston in human service administration with a concentration in nonprofit management.
Mm-hmm. And where'd you grow up?
Now I'm being interviewed. I grew up in New York. I identify as a Nuyorican, which for some people who don't know is a Puerto Rican that grew up in New York. There's a different sort of identity to that, different feel, different kind of Puerto Rican. And I came to Massachusetts maybe about 20 years ago and ended up staying here because I met this boy, man, child, some time ago, and I ended up staying here and didn't go back home. But yeah, That's me.
And what do you think drew you to social work? Why? Why?
um, I've always watched my mother be the person that people who speak Spanish go to because they were always dealing with people in a hospital setting that didn't speak the language. And they always needed help sort of understanding how to navigate systems and understand how to get other needs met other than their health care, but was impacting their health. And my mother was always that go-to person for a lot of people who came to, a city hospital. So I watched that for a long time, never really understood what it was. And then one day I went to the symposium for social workers. And while I was there, I started to realize that, wow, these are my people. This is what I want. This is cool. I like this. And then I saw a table for Simmons, and that's where it all started. Like, I just was like clear. And that was about maybe 6 years ago now. I was just clear. I want to be a social worker. I didn't know that's what my mother was doing, even though she's not a trained social worker, but that's what she was doing. She was doing that community social work. So that's my story, how I got to where I am. I finally figured out what I want to be when I grow up.
Would you call yourself a clinician?
Yeah, I mean, we use a lot of terms in social work. Clinician, therapist. Sometimes it depends on what kind of social work you practice, which sometimes determines what or how you identify yourself. But generally, sometimes I use clinician, but generally I use social worker.
But I think, are they two different things?
So they can be. The two sort of distinguishers in my mind is clinicians tend to provide individual therapy, if you will, or group therapy, and social workers, they do the same thing. They provide therapy, but they also include the case management piece and how you help people access services and resources. But to me, they're interchangeable terms. But again, like I said, it all depends on sort of where you're practicing your work. That really kind of defines what your clinical identifier
Yeah, but
is.
I think I think I have to just be honest, is that when people say social worker, there's, people automatically think you got 50 cases, you're working for child welfare, and that's it. You're an ongoing social worker, ongoing case manager or whatever. And there's only just one level to that. And so I think that's just how people kind of think about it in terms of social work that way. Even in terms of everything that you do, I'm not sure if there is one word that actually describes all of your skills and how you use them.
Well, to be honest, that all depends on who you're talking to and what people's experience is, to be honest.
Well, if we look at when you tell people what you do for work, and people are like, oh, man, that's a hard job. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
like,
they only say that when you start to tell them what your actual work is.
Yeah, but most of the time there isn't, like, people don't want to ask you like questions about that. You know what I mean? It's not like people, and then you're like, oh no, or like, oh no, I'm a therapist. I'm a clinician. People are like, oh, you're a clinician. Okay, so what is your specialty? You tell people you're a social worker, it's like flatline. No one wants to hear anything else.
It all depends. They might ask. It's not even specialty. They might, because we don't really consider ourselves specialty. I think it's more of a niche. It's a niche. I mean, I guess that could be a specialty, but social workers do all kinds of different things.
Right. Well, see,
that's what's
right. Well, but things
awesome
right.
about
well,
social
exactly.
workers.
But for the most part, nobody knows that. They only know the one job. They only know the one job, and that is the grind. 100 cases.
100 cases. Now you're exaggerating.
All right, 25 cases for one person. You're going to make visits at people's houses. You know what I mean? And that's it.
I understand that, but generally, I understand where you're coming from, what you're saying, but generally, just to keep it basic, social workers really are the glue in a lot of situations, and they're not valued to be the glue in a lot of different situations, but we keep a lot of our societal issues and concerns and worries, we keep things together. People just don't. It's social workers are misunderstood as to what their role is, and part of that has a lot to do with our experiences are so vast. Like, you can work in healthcare, you can work in child protection, you can work in a nursing home, you can work in, just providing therapy for kids and parents.
Right.
There's just so many things that social workers could do. We're trained across a spectrum of issues, but we're really the glue.
Well, I just, like you said, I don't think people see that. I think there needs to be like Love and Social Work. If there was like on VH1 and stuff like that, so people could actually really see what happens.
You're silly.
You know what I mean? Yeah, someone who works for child welfare, or someone who works as a therapist at a school. You know what I mean? Then people would have a better sense of what social workers do and how they can use their skills in a different way. You know what I mean? Think about that. That'd be dope, though.
I do know what you mean. I think the issue is that people who are psychiatrists and psychologists, because they have the doctorate, the PhDs, they're the ones that get all the credit for what happens. But the reality is, even those folks couldn't do what they do without social workers.
Well, I mean, I think what's interesting as well is that social workers, of course, can practice, and do therapy and stuff like that. And I don't think, like I said, a lot of folks actually, know that, the fact that you have the credentials, like you said. What are the credentials?
Well, so it's a hustle, right? So a lot of people there's varying levels of credentials for social workers. The lowest is a LSWA, which is a licensed social worker associate, lowest level. That
sounds really low, by the way.
Well, it is. You don't have to have a master's degree to have that licensure. Low. But
not like that means anything, because it doesn't.
No, it really doesn't. It doesn't mean anything. But let's be clear about something. Licensure is professionalizing people. It's professionalizing industry or a profession that really came from grassroots.
Right.
People on the ground doing community action, organizing. Those are social workers.
Right.
You don't need credentials to do that. You need street cred. You need to know you need to understand what's going on in your community. You need to understand what it's like to take the bus in your community and what you don't have access to. That's the bottom line.
Wow.
But those folks, they can get these credentials.
Right.
But, it's a hustle, and we have to be clear that everything's a hustle. Everything's about money.
Right.
But the reality is, what do you bring into it?
Wow, that street cred is crazy.
It is. You got to know.
Is that the difference between you being chased out of somebody's house or not? Street cred.
No, your ass will be chased all the time. you trying to do something that they don't want you to do.
So this is
you might get cut.
So it's a little bit different street cred, though.
Well, I guess the difference is it's exclusive. So that's the lowest, and then the highest is a licensed independent social worker, which is we call it LI. That's what I'm after.
Right.
But that's where the cheddar is. I mean, that's
let me hold up. There may be some people that don't understand what cheddar is. The cheddar is the dinero, the money. The cheddar, the bag. You know what I'm saying? The bag.
The access to different positions that have, you get more money. I mean, right now I'm at LCSW, which is a licensed clinical social worker. So I have a lot of space to do a lot of different things, but I can only work under somebody else's licensure, somebody who has an LI. So that's where I'm at. I'm getting my hours. Right. But the reality is that we have a lot of social workers. My mother was a social worker, never been trained, but she was doing social work.
Right.
All 42 years of her life.
Right.
The community, the people in that community knew who was the person. And they would go and they would ask for what they need, and she would do her best to figure out how to get them access to what they needed so
Right.
that their children were healthy, they were healthy. That's just the bottom line.
Right.
And that's glue. Nothing else. So I guess nothing else matters to me. I want to be the glue.
Right.
That's what I like being. So what I like about social work is that you can work in any kind of population
Right.
because some of the ethics and values are all the same across the board.
Right.
You start with where people are at.
Yeah. That's I think that's incredibly important. And it's something that more people don't necessarily do, is really being able to meet people where they're at and then rise together. You know what I mean? Not trying to bring people down, not trying to talk down to people or anything like that. Meet people where they are, and then we rise together, which is incredible. So, with that said, what spoke to you about the Triggered Project? Red actually started with the Red Monster, which was a short movie. What spoke to you about the project?
So the fact that there aren't many spaces for Black and brown men to speak their truth and to talk about what they've experienced in a setting where it's not about judgment and it's just about the person and about what they experienced.
Right.
And creating that space for other people to feel comfortable to talk about what happened to them.
Right.
And what's different about the Trigger Project versus, the Me Too movement, which I don't have any qualms about that. I support equally. What's different though is that the Trigger Project really focuses on how you bring people together as a community. And what I mean by that is it's not run by gender. It's not run by color. It's just basic. What happened to you? And how has that impacted your life? And how many opportunities do you have to be in a community where it happened to other people, but then there's also people who are there to be supportive, like social workers, clinicians, psychologists, so on. And it's just it's freeing, and it really speaks to what my beliefs and my ideals are, which is really about, I don't subscribe to feminism. I subscribe to womanism because it includes men and women.
Mujerista?
Mujerista.
Did I say my Puerto Rican accent okay?
That actually was the best that
Really?
I heard for you.
Wow, I'm really impressed. My Puerto Ricans in my family would be really proud of me right now. Even though I'm Bayesian, but I have Puerto Ricans in my family.
But it brings together what is real about Black and brown communities is being together. The togetherness is what's important to me. Right.
And for those folks who just tuned in, this is Living a Triggered Life podcast. My name is Keith Maskell. I have my partner in crime here, Roxann Maskell, and we are, the first couple of sessions, you guys are going to get to know us a little bit. And so I'm interviewing Roxann, so you guys can just kind of get to know her and hear all the brilliant things that she has to say, because she is brilliant. And just so you know, the Triggered Project, www.triggered1.com is the website. Triggered is a story of two men, Malik and Keith, both looking back at their lives, talking about their experiences of being sexually abused, trying to, as they have grown into men, how they've processed that, and then looking towards the future. We got a grant from the Boston Foundation. Thank you so much. 2 grants to be able to develop this piece. And we are now taking the conversation.
Excuse me, sorry.
Taking the conversation national, so to speak. That's what's kind of sparked this podcast. Being a survivor, being in a relationship, Roxann and I wanted to talk about what it's like to live a triggered life, to acknowledge the fact of what has happened in the past, and to seek positive relationships with loved ones, of course, which is difficult, family, but also just us in general and how we've kind of dealt with it. So that's what this podcast will be about. We'll have guests. We'll talk to people. You hear about Roxann and I's relationship in some ways, and we're gonna have some fun.
So just so that people know, is it triggered the number one or triggered ONE1.com?
Always keeping me in line. www.triggered1, one as in one, KRS 111 as the number.com. Did y'all like that?
Simple question, always complicated
I had to put a little
answer.
hip hop in there for my hip hop heads that are out there. Triggered1.com. You can follow us on Twitter. Of course, yes, we do have Twitter. Triggered112 on Instagram. Triggered_ONE_. That's how you can follow us. And Facebook at Triggered1ONE. That's how you find us. We here talking to Roxann Maskell.
Keith Maskell.
Triggered Project.
So can I just say something about this podcast that I wanted to sort of introduce that I didn't say?
I mean, there's nobody else here but me and you. So, like,
I don't have to ask permission.
No, you don't have to necessarily ask permission. I mean,
okay.
I mean, we kind of run this like it's
right.
It's me and you. So,
all right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, I just want to say something about why it's called Living a Triggered Life.
That'd be awesome, Roxann. Thank you so much. You're the bomb.
So Keith already talked about identifying that he's a survivor.
Thanks.
And the social work thing is to say, we all survivors of complex trauma. That's the bottom line. You know what I'm saying? But I also am a survivor, and we have a story that we'll sort of uncover through this podcast. It's not all going to happen at once, but living a triggered life is really a way to talk about that we continue to feel triggered and be triggered throughout our lives. Mm-hmm. And how we manage that is what makes a difference. And so I like that. Yeah, you do. Yeah. So what you will see, at least in the stage production of Triggered, which is also a piece of all of this.
Is Triggered a one-man show?
It's a one-man show.
Oh, okay.
That stars Keith Maskell. But one of the things that's really important to understand about living a triggered life is that being triggered, it sort of never goes away. It's always there in some fashion or form.
Right.
It just looks different over time as you evolve, as you grow, as your relationships grow. But that's what's important to understand is that once triggered, you're always going to be triggered.
Right. Acknowledgement is important. It's so funny how, you could work in, I do some work with, full-time actor, but I do some work in schools and things like that. And so the kids have picked up on it. It's a buzzword. Oh, I feel triggered. Can I go to the nurse? Like
that language.
The way you're talking to me. Yo, the way you talking to me right now? Yo, you got me mad triggered. You know what? I need to talk to the nurse. I'm out. like wow. Who you been talking to? Who you been talking to? Y'all know how to you get yourself another way to get yourself out of class is talking about that you've been triggered. You know what I mean? And what can folks say? And there's so many people, there's so many folks that it happens to all the time. Emotional outbursts out of the blue. You look at people like, Dag, what's wrong with them? Something happened to that sparked a memory, that sparked something for emotional outburst. It happens. It happens all the time. And I think trying to figure out what those things are, or trying to be in a relationship where someone can kind of tell you about it as you do your work, your self-work, I
There's a
think is
lot of
incredibly,
steps to it.
it's a lot of
A
steps
lot of
to it.
steps to it.
It's a lot of steps.
Yeah, so that it doesn't impact your life in a way that you're not able to function.
It's a daily battle. That's the realness of it. It's a daily battle. I know that, I feel like, 15 years ago that I should have been, trying to work on myself a lot more, even though I was doing the best I could, no question, but there was definitely another level that I could have got to, with kind of seeking therapy and things like that. But that's a process within yourself. You know what I mean? Like, in our communities, and even as men, it's supposed to be tough and whatever. And so what does that mean? What does that mean for me if I need help that way? And who am I going to ask? And who am I going to talk to?
And where you're going to go.
And where am I going to go?
And being triggered or having certain experiences in your life, when you add a long-term relationship like ours, that's a lot. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is like, I always talk about it, like this is Black love in real life in living color. And that's what we're talking about, living a triggered life. Like we're talking about our Black love and living that triggered life. And how we don't allow being triggered to deteriorate or destroy our marriage, basically.
I'm married to you?
Oh, you didn't know that?
Oh, my fault. My bad.
Get your life.
We jumped that broom, y'all. We jumped that broom, y'all. We jumped it. No, I think that's important. That is just so important. And I don't think, and the thing about it is people like to give advice and whatever. We feel like we're just another couple that's trying to figure it out every single day. We're not experts about a lot of things. But we do feel like sharing is important, incredibly important, not just for doing this just because it's connected to the project or whatever, just because it's something that we've always talked about. I call myself a ghetto therapist.
You're talking about the podcast or something else?
I'm talking about the podcast.
Okay.
We're talking about the podcast. We're talking about doing, at one point we talked about, wow, we should work with couples and stuff like that. But I've been known as a ghetto therapist. Dum 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 dum. You know what I mean? Someone that people just always talk to and just start telling stories.
Hoodology.
You know what I mean?
Hoodology.
Right, hoodology. I just put out like 5 cents. I do it like the Peanuts old style, 5 cents. Hook me up. But I think also too, because my mom was a big hairdresser and things like that. So, I cut hair and things, a little hobby.
But one of the things
skills.
why I just want to get back. One of the things about why this podcast is important, I think, to me, is that both being survivors, living those triggered lives, it has an impact on our relationship. We're really not meant to have lasted as long as we have.
No, you were supposed to meant to like mess this up a long time ago.
Y'all can't see me, but straight side eye right now.
Woo,
and
man.
that's what's important to talk about, because this has been a process.
So you don't think that we were supposed to last?
No, I think there's a lot of people around us that when and if they find out that this is the deal. Like, it's a lot of people around us don't.
Oh, they have no idea.
They don't know.
They have no idea.
And I don't regularly disclose.
Right.
So
thank you, by the way. Thank you.
That's all right. That's what this is about.
Right.
So I don't really disclose my history, but I'm an incest survivor basically.
Right.
But I don't really disclose my history. People have no idea.
Right.
How much this is a huge part of our marriage and our relationship, and the things that go down sometimes that we have to work through.
Right.
And my hope is that we're going to be able to give people listening to this podcast some hope,
right,
and some ideas about how to really start processing what's happened to them in their lives,
right,
and how much impact that's having,
right,
on their relationships.
Yes.
Because that's where you get, when you start feeling isolated and you've been triggered, that's when you just feel It's total hopelessness.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. And we were just having, had some really great conversations today with a couple people and things like that, and really trying to process for folks were really trying to process, a relationship and their role in it and things like that. But the one thing that was not there, one thing that wasn't necessarily talked about until, we kind of asked some questions was what happened to them as a child. How did that affect them in the relationship? And I think that's a really hard process to grapple and to come.
You mean in an intimate partner relationship?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Absolutely. I mean,
especially as
when
men.
we grow up, that's how we learn how to be in relationship with other people.
Right.
Like that's everything. We just don't. We need help recognizing what it is.
Right.
Like what we learned as values of relationships or what we learned as values of men and women.
Right.
But that all gets poured into what you do. We just don't.
Right.
We don't utilize therapy that much, so we don't have no one to process that with.
Right. And who's going to tell us? And sometimes the people that are raising us or have had their own trauma, which they don't tell us about to protect us, or is it protect them? To protect us, or is it protect them?
I don't even know if it's protection. I think you could describe it as that, but a lot of people don't believe in talking about what happened to them because they're not sure what's going to happen and they're afraid of falling apart. As if falling apart is something to be afraid of.
Well, you're just not. I could keep it 100. Sometimes you're not sure if you want to speak what the truth is because you're not sure what's going to happen after. There's such a fear of actually trying to face the hardest thing that you've ever had to face because you're not sure what else is going to come with it. You don't know if you're going to fall apart, if you're going to. The fear is whether or not you can get it back together and keep it moving, right?
But the strength is actually that is actually the best thing to do because you're not letting it live in your body.
Yeah, but here's the thing, but also too, let's think about it like this, but then who's going to help you try to put it all back together? That's the hardest thing. Sometimes
that's when you find out who are the people.
And most of the time there's not anybody there. It's a tough risk. It's a tough risk in some ways to allow yourself to just like crumble like some Play-Doh, like someone squish you like some Play-Doh. You know what I'm saying?
I guess I'm just super hopeful because I feel like
it's all about support. It's all about support.
But I feel like there are so many different things that help us be resilient as Black and brown people that even if you crumble, that's just the beginning of your rising up.
Yeah, there's no question about that. There's no question about that. And people find their way to survive. People find their way back up. But having that support definitely makes.
No, agree.
And finding the right support, which is the other thing that's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Incredibly difficult to find that support to be like, okay, I got my folks and I got my folks. So, wait.
You're talking about therapy.
I'm gonna fall apart right now.
You're talking about therapy.
And other type of supports, people, family, because sometimes your family can help you out in a lot of different ways. Sometimes faith can help you out in a lot of ways, give you the structure.
So what helped you?
And stuff like that. I'm cute.
Next.
I'm not cute.
That's irrelevant to the
am
conversation.
I cute? I'm just asking the question. Can I ask that question? Am I cute?
I think you know how I'm going to answer that question.
You see how it is, right? I can't even get a cute. You see how stuff's in the way of the relationship? I can't even get a cute.
No, right now you're not getting it. You get it other times.
You see, y'all? You see the narrative that I'm painting of her?
Whatever. What helped you?
What helped me what?
Get to the place that you're at. What was the support for you?
You, number one. I thought that was great. One, also being forced into a situation where it was a mirror to how much work I needed to do. I think that was incredibly not helpful situation, but also helpful. And I think that I was lucky enough to find a really dope therapist.
How did you find that therapist?
Well, here's how I found a therapist. I went to this woman by the name of Roxann, right? And I said, "Yo, Rox." She said, "Yo, Keith." She said, "Yo, Keith, you need to get you behind in therapy." And I was like, "Yeah, all right." So she made a phone call, right? Because I had to ask for help. I had to ask for help, and sometimes that's the most hardest thing to do. She'd been telling me or whatever. I had to ask. I said, "All right, I need help. I need help." She made the call, called the insurance company or whatever, and then luckily, is that what happened?
No.
What happened? See, that's the whole thing. That was a setup, y'all. Y'all didn't realize that. That was a relationship setup. Like, she asked the question knowing that she knew the answer and I wasn't going to tell the story right, which doesn't happen very often. So tell the story.
So you did get forced into a situation where you were crumbling, basically, before my eyes. But I didn't know you were crumbling. And then you told me enough for me to realize that you were falling apart. But at that point, there was nothing I could do. I was sort of powerless in the situation. So the only thing I could think of was, how do I get this dude into some therapy? How do I find him a black male therapist? Because I feel like that's what would be helpful. Do you know how hard it is to find a black male therapist? It's not easy. It's like a needle in a haystack.
Mm-hmm.
So
no question.
I was in therapy, so I asked my therapist, who was old school therapist in the community, and knew about this one guy. And so we worked to try to make sure that he could accept our insurance and so on.
We'll call him EW. That's what we're going to call him. EW.
But that was after months of trying to convince Keith of going to, you need to go to therapy because this ain't working for us at this point. You're falling apart in front of me. So it took a while.
That's what happened?
Yes.
I know sometimes I'm not sure what, there's different versions of things or whatever. But okay,
that's my perspective.
I'm going to rock with you.
That's my perspective.
I'm going to rock with you, though.
But we're going to tease this out. It's not going to be today, but we're going to tease this out.
I'm going to rock with you, though. I'm going to rock with you.
The quick story is, finally got you to that therapist. And I could hear the difference in you.
But I had to go.
But it was really hard finding this dude.
I mean, the thing about it is, it was very difficult. And the thing about it is, I am a proud Bayesian with Puerto Ricans in this family. But, West End Island, Barbados. Big shout out to Barbados. All the Bayesians stand up. Gotta say that. But still in Bayesian culture, West Indian culture, what's wrong with you? You gonna tell people your business? Well, you gonna sit in the room like something wrong with you? Like that was, that's kind of what it was. You know what I mean? My people should have been in therapy since when they came out the womb here. But, that didn't necessarily happen. So it was difficult. I had to just actually say to myself that I needed it, and, I also was really incredibly scared because I wasn't sure what was going to come out. Was I, really talk about the abuse, talk about the things that I needed to talk about. I didn't know what was coming else with it. I didn't know what else.
What got you there? If you're that scared, what got you there?
I had to step up. It wasn't about me. It was about you. It was about us. That's what it was about. When it was a choice and it was like, man, if I don't do this, like I need to do this. I need to do this for us. I need to do it for me and take care of myself. And taking care of myself is taking care of her. And taking care of us. That's what I had to realize. I always knew it. I always try to put her first and put our relationship first and whatever. But when my issues really started getting in the way, I had to make a decision. Do I choose? I got to choose me. And choosing me and being responsible for myself and my care and my mental stability and things like that was the best thing that I could have done to take care of us and to take care of her. And I think that's something that gets lost. It gets lost in relationships. That's not even anything that's been a dialogue. We've talked about it. She's responsible for herself and her being and mental being and whatever, and I'm responsible for myself. we can, of course, we need help. We ask. There's no question about it. It's not like we're both on an island or we don't support each other. But, knowing that I'm responsible for myself that way and thinking about that and the responsibility that I have to myself and also to her, it's kind of a duality thing, really just made a huge difference with it. And it definitely felt like it definitely made me a better man, a better person. But to be able to sit across from someone who understood Bayesian culture and things like that, but also was a little bit...
Talking about EW.
Yeah, EW.
Right now, not me.
EW. Big shout out to EW. Thank you so much. You the man. EW. But being able to sit across from somebody and with no judgment, not someone who was just, sitting there and staring at the wall or whatever, but was actually engaged in the conversation and stuff like that, was a big deal, that would actually react and things. And I feel like that's called
validation, yo. That's
called, what it is?
Yeah, because it means that somebody sees you, somebody hears you,
yes,
somebody can give you back feedback,
yes,
validate your existence,
right,
validate that you're not all the things that you think you are. Or what?
Can you validate that I'm cute? Strike two. Keep going.
Now that you interrupted me.
I'm sorry. Excuse me.
But that's validation, That's simple validations. And sometimes that's what a therapist can do. Just be sitting there and acknowledging your existence, acknowledging what you went through.
Right.
And keeping it basic and simple.
Right.
I call it the dump truck. When I talk to people about therapy, I'm like, let's envision this as a dump truck. Mm-hmm. You got a whole bunch of stuff, junk in your truck. All you need to do.
Did you say junk in your truck?
Yes, I said
junk in your truck. Junk in your truck.
That's what I said.
Okay. I mean, you got to explain that because,
well,
we got some people out here.
You got stuff you got bags, you got all kinds of stuff inside your truck. And therapy to me is about how do you put that dump truck in reverse and dump.
I'll be honest with you. I always talk about it when the first time I went to the therapy, I went to the intake person and I beat that behind. That's how I always talk about it, because I was just slapping her across the face with issues and stories. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and this happened to me, right, and then this happened, exactly, and then that happened.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like I would just hit, like I was just like I had a bat and I was just hitting her across the face with everything, and you could see her eyes being like, "What? And what happened? And what else?" You know what I mean? And that was like an hour and a half. It was like diarrhea. It was like diarrhea of the mouth. No, diarrhea of the abuse, I guess. And so that's how I thought about it. I was like, well, if I'm gonna do this, I'm just gonna get it out, because I don't know what's gonna happen next time, or
the intake
or whatever.
The intake is just about someone trying to figure out what kind of therapist you're looking for. What are some of the issues? Because sometimes some of us specialize in certain issues.
Right. Yeah, she didn't. She didn't specialize in black men. I'm gonna tell you that.
No, she specialized in being able to take the information and moving it along.
I think she was scarred.
Ran over her with the truck.
Scarred. I think I scarred her for real.
Well, but
She might have wrote a book about it.
But here's a reality about this.
Yes.
How many black men you think come in and do an intake at that place? The place that we're talking about. Which is a really hard environment to go to, because everybody's in different stages. I was in case study.
No, there's no question about it. Like, you walking in and you're sitting around and people looking at you like, do people know I got issues?
Well, and then some people are sitting there looking like they have issues. Let's be honest about this.
No question. There was a couple folks who were medicated. No question.
So then you feel like, I don't think this is the right place. So then you have somebody smoking cigarettes after cigarette after cigarette, talking to everybody in the waiting room. Or do we really need the sound effects? Or they're sitting there just staring at you in this very odd way. Mm-hmm. Like, it's an uncomfortable space.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I remember I think that felt so uncomfortable. I had the anxiety that I just took it out on the intake person.
I think you did.
And I'm okay with that.
But also you were a virgin, so. Therapy virgin.
So let me just be clear with the choice words that you've used so far, or phrases. So junk in the trunk, and virgin. So I just want to point that out.
I'm sorry.
Just want
I
to
can't help myself.
Just want to point that out. Is that a New York thing? A New York thing?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So do you speak Spanish?
Yes.
Oh.
Why is that important?
I just thought if some people may, just want to know if you speak Spanish at all and stuff like that.
Oh.
You know what I mean? I thought that might be something important
Oh.
that people may want to know whether or not you speak Spanish.
Oh.
For those people who are just joining us, you are listening to Living a Triggered Life podcast with Keith and
Roxann.
Maskell. This has been great, Roxann. Thank you so much for coming and agreeing to do this, for being actually our first guest for the podcast. I think that was pretty excellent, pretty awesome. That you were able to share your thoughts about your work, why Triggered, a little bit about the Triggered project as well. I think folks, hopefully folks will want to come back and listen to us some more. We planning to keep doing this. I don't know if we have a choice to stop, but we're going to keep going. We're going to keep rocking, keep trying to tell stories, keep trying to get people to tell their stories and be validated, and also give resources as well. Website is www.triggered1, as in the number 1.com. We do have a resource page as well for folks who want to get help.
Or folks who want to give us their information.
Exactly.
To get referrals.
Exactly. We're located. We do this out of Boston, Massachusetts. But we definitely are worldwide. That was my attempt at some special effects. But we're really excited and very happy and humbled for this opportunity to be able to bring this podcast to you. And hopefully y'all will listen. I mean, hopefully y'all will listen. I mean, that's what I got. Roxann.
Yes, Keith.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I'm good.
I mean, you talked for almost an hour, so there's nothing wrong with that. I talked almost a half an hour, I should say.
Well, I get warmed up.
That's right, girl. Warm it up.
Engine's revving.
Uh-oh. I'm in trouble. Start talking about engines being revved up.
It's warm.
Is it purr?
That's a private conversation, sir.
Wow, really? After dump truck, virgin, now you talking about private? You know what I'm saying? You disclose. Really, now you closing it up now? That's what's up?
Yeah, we're wrapping up the show here.
My goodness gracious. Y'all see what it is. Yo, this is real. This is 100% real. No question. But if anybody wants to produce Love and Social Work, hit me up, because we can get it done. I think it would be incredibly fascinating. I think, we can get more people of color involved in it and things like that. Or actually loving therapists. I think it would be really great. Big shout out to Haji P. Henson, who's really has a great new foundation, and is really trying to get more folks of color into the field. It's incredible, and she's talked about her struggles and things to be able to find a therapist as well. And that's one thing we'll be talking about too. We're going to talk about the process that people can go through to find a therapist. Now, that therapy is, sometimes not for everybody and things like that. It's a hard thing to be able to do. But it's important to know how to do it and when you decide if that's something for you. I think that's just important.
And there's more types of therapy than just talk.
Correct. And that's it. Right. And that's important. That's important.
People don't know that.
Right. And we're going to have a show where we're going to talk about different types of therapy and things like that. I'm an artist and things, and being an actor, not to use my art as a therapy, but it is something that can be very therapeutic. But thank you guys so much for listening in to Living a Triggered Life podcast with Keith and Roxann Maskell. And we will see you all next time. Remember, thriving is better than surviving. We out, y'all.
Ashe.
Ashe.